Hilchas Sanhedrin v'insh namsurun lehem Perek Shlishi. Adei Masai Yeshun Adayonim Bedin. Until when do they sit Bedin? Now we learned that there's Sanhedrin Agadol, and then there's the Sanhedrin Ktana, which is Bezdin Chav Gimel, and then there's also a Bezdin of Shleisha, the Dayonim of Shleisha. Says Sanhedrin Ktana Bezdin Shel Shleisha is Yeshun Mei Achar Tfilas HaShachar Ad Seif Shoyz Bayim. They would daven Shachris by the nets, and then after Shachris they would sit down to do Dinteris until the end of the 6th hour. Now in the Pale it's brought down that if you eat after the Shosh Shishis, it's not healthy. So Mela, when it says that Seif Sheish Shoyz, so the Sma says it doesn't mean really after the 6th hour. Those Ad Seif Sheish Shoyz V'lei Ad B'chlal. Those until towards the end of the 6th hour. At that point in time they would eat. So that's been again the Sanhedrin Ktana and the Bezdin Shel Shleisha. Now, Bezdin Hagadol, Hayeshun Mi Tomit Shel Shachar, Ad Tomit Shel Bein Arbaim. Now the question is, Tomit Shel Shachar was really before nets. So when did they daven? And also Ad Tomit Shel Shachar. So when did they eat? So it's brought down that Be'emes we learn Behemshech that not everybody has to really be in Bezdin Hagadol the whole time. You're supposed to always leave at least Chav Gimel in Bezdin Hagadol. You shouldn't leave if there's not at least Chav Gimel. But if there's Chav Gimel, so you could leave. So Mele doesn't mean that the entire Bezdin Hagadol was sitting there, me Tomit Shel Shachar, Tomit Shel Bein Arbaim. From Tomit Shel Shachar until Tomit Shel Bein Arbaim, the Bezdin Hagadol was functioning, but it didn't have to have all Ayin Aleph, because not for everything you need Ayin Aleph. It was functioning in the sense that there were Chav Gimel over there. And it's Aval Bezdin Hagadol, Yesh mit Tomit Shel Shachar, Tomit Shel Bein Arbaim. V'Shabbosav Yom Tov, Yesh B'Samedrish Shavar Habayis. They didn't want to sit in the Lishkas Hagazos because ain't done. You're not done on Shabbos. So the Bezdin Hagadol was still there. So they would sit in the Beis HaMedrash, but not in the Lishkas Hagazos. Halacha Beis. Ein Bezdin Shel Shivim Ve'echad Tzrichim Sheyakulim Yeshun Ke'echad B'Mkeim B'Mikdash. You don't have to have that all Ayin Aleph should sit Ke'echad B'Mkeim B'Mikdash. Eleb Meis Be'ez Sheyotzrichim Le'eskabetz Miskabs and Kulim. If it was necessary to don something which you could only be done with a Bezdin Shel Ayin Aleph, so then Miskabs and Kulim. Aber B'Shara Yites Kol Mishiyeli Yesik, he had something to do, is Yotzel Asis Cheftzei V'Chezer. He could go and do what he had to do. He didn't have to sit a whole time in the Lishkas Hagazos. Aber V'hu Shel Yivchasu Mi'esim Mishleisha Yeshun Tomid Kol Zman Yeshivasam. Notice from Tomid Shel Shachar until Tomid Shel Bein Arbaim, there always had to be Chav Gimel there. Masha'enki, and the rest of the time, they didn't have to be Chav Gimel there. They didn't have to. It was the time that from Tomid Shel Shachar until Shel Bein Arbaim, there had to be Chav Gimel. They didn't have to have Ayin Aleph. The only time they needed to have Ayin Aleph was only when there was a certain thing that had to be done only with Ayin Aleph. So then they would all be Miskabetz. Now, in the time when it was after Tomid Shel Bein Arbaim, so there wasn't Chav Gimel either. Nachmal. V'hu shel yivchasu me'esem shleisha yeshun Tomid kol zman yeshivasam. Now, tzarech echad memlatzis, if one of the Bezdin Hagadol had to leave, so there is a mistakel b'chaver v'anisharim, im yishor sham esum shleisha yotze. He has to take a look to make sure that there's 23 left. V'im lav le'yetze ad sheyaviach. Halacha Gimel. Ein maschilin es adinim balayla. B'pi hashmul lomdu shadinim kinegoyim shenema kol riv v'chol nega. And meles, so we have a hekesh between riv and nega. By nega it says b'yem hirois anega. So we learn out that the negoyim has to be seen by yem. And now that it says kol riv v'chol nega, so we learn out that dinim also have to be by yem. Marias negoyim by yem, af adinim is also by yem. V'chein ein makabden edus. V'lei mekayim shtoros balayla. The Kabbalah's edus, that's the tchilas adin, and kiyum shtoros is also a din. So therefore, ein makabden edus v'lei mekayim shtoros balayla. Ubedinim momenes im eschilu bayem mutar ligmer adin balayla. So the Ram said before the lashon a maschil is adin balayla, because benegeh dinim momenes, if you were eschilu bayem, we learn out from a pasuk that it says v'shafte b'choleis. So we learn out. So even though on one hand we have a limud to teach us that has to be bayem, on the other hand it says v'shafte sam b'choleis, that it can be b'choleis. So we learn out that tchilas adin has to be bayem, and the sof adin benegeh dinim momenes has to be balayla. Mashenkin din nefashis over there it says v'heika oisam l'neged hashamish. The Gemara learns out that so the tliya is like the gemar din. So v'heika oisam l'neged hashamish. We learn out that even the gemar din of dini nefashis also has to be bayem. Is nachamal. Hascholas adin always is bayem. Now there is eidos and the Kabbalah's eidos and kiyum shtaros all has to be bayem. Beneged dinim momenes is a din. If the Aschala is Bayim, the Gemar could be Balayla, Mashenke Badin in the Fashis, it always has to be, the whole thing has to be Bayim. Now, Hanachles is also Kedinim, Shenem Bem Lechukas Mishpat, Lefichach Ema Pila Nachles Balayla. So, in other words, when you're dividing Nachles amongst the Yarshim, and you're making Girolis, and that girdle, that's going to be the Gemar HaNachla, according to the girdle, that's how, that'll decide who's going to get the Nachla. So it's Ki'ilu like a din, and therefore, because we learn out Lechukas Mishpat, and therefore, a Mapil Nachla is Balayla. Halacha Vov, Shnayim Shenichnusu Levakris Achela. V'tziva b'fnei mimera tzavod, that who should yashin, who should yashin what? Is koisvin. They could write what the tzavod said. But Eisen din means they don't finalize what the din is. In other words, they're not saying now we're making the division that this Yerush gets this and this Yerush gets this. They just write a Haggadas Eidu, so to speak, a star, that this person was the person that was mitzvah to them and told them this should be the tzavah of how the chalukah should be. However, that's if there are only two, because they're two, they're not a bezdin. However, in Hoyush Leisha, if there were three, is Rotzu Kesum. They could go ahead and write a star as if they're just Eidim, and this star will go to Bezdin, and Bezdin will establish how the tzavah is going to be. However, Rotzu Eisen din, they could write a din. In other words, they don't need a Kabbalas Eidus, because they're themselves, they're the Dayanim, and they were Makabal, they exact saw. He spoke to them. And therefore, they could be make Eisadin. In other words, when they write the star, they could write the star together Hadas Eidus of what he told them to do, or together, this is what happened. They're Dayanim, they're saying that this is an established din. That's how they're writing the star. That they could write it as a star of Bezdin, or as they're coming along and saying they're the Bezdin, and they're telling us that this is the finalization of how the Chalukas Hayrusha is. That's Bayim. If it's Bayim, so they could write as a Bezdin. However, Ava Balayla, but if they write it Balayla, so then Koisu, they could only write it as Eidus. There's their Makabal Eidus. They're saying Eidus, what this person said at Tzavah. However, the Ein Oisin did, but they can't do it, they can't write it, the Tur did, and saying, like, when they write the star, how are they writing the star? They're writing the star. They, the Bezdin, are saying that this is the Chalukah, or they're Eidim saying that this is what he was mitzvah to make the Chalukah, and then Bezdin will decide, so that's the Chalukah. Halacha Zayin, Kol Bezdin Shel Yisrael Shu Hagun, Shchina Imoim. Lefichach, since the Shchina is in the Bezdin, Tzrichim Adayonim Leisha Be'ema V'yira V'atifa, then is wearing like a talus, a baggage covered, the kaved reish, mitzad the covered of the Shechina. And also, v'asr lahakal reish, elischek, elisaper p'sich b'tela b'bezdin, ela b'diritera v'chochma. So it's both things side there's a chiyuv of sitting be'ema b'yiro b'kaved reish, and there's an isser of sicha b'tela, or talking lischek, elisaper b'sicha b'tela, mitzad the covered of the Shechina. Halacha ches. Kol Sanhedrin a melech erish golus. Shemidulem liyisrael dayon she'eni hogim. We saw before that the Sanhedrin were the ones that were memunah to mimana dayonim. So Sanhedrin a melech erish golus. Shemidulem liyisrael dayon she'eni chochem she'eni hogim. Ve'eni chochem bechochmas hatera v'royli is dayon. Is aval pishu kulim machmadim. And other things he's a very, very machmadim. He does maisim tevim. Abulapel is missing in Chochmas HaTeira, v'yesh b'tevis acheres, but he's missing in Chochmas HaTeira, is arei zeh shehimide ever b'leisasa. Shenem alei sakiru ponim b'mishpot, piashmo lamdu, shezeh medaber keneged ha-memanu le'ishav dayonim. The pashto pshat alei sakiru ponim b'mishpot is why you're being done a mishpot, you shouldn't be makir ponim in order to be done not correctly. But Chazal, piashmo lamdu, that it means the Yeshua Sakiru upon the Mishpat to be madna adayin sheini hogim. Amr Chacham Shematena Yishpleni No Yishiveni Dayin, even a No b'Maisov. Yishpleni Giber Yishiveni b'Dayin. Yishpleni Krevi Yishiveni Dayin. Yishpleni Yideh b'Choloshin is Yishiveni b'Dayin. V'nimtza Mezakes Achayev u'Mechayes Hazakay le'mepnei Shehu Rasha u'mepnei sheini Yideh. V'kach Nemal Sakiru upon the Mishpat. So there's a Yisur to be mana adayin, which is an eni chochem b'chochem satera, even though he has all kinds of other milas, but since he's eni chochem b'chochem satera, and therefore there's a concern that he's not going to be paskin kohegen, so therefore you're not allowed to be mana madayin, and that's the pasuk where is sakiru panim b'mishpat. Ve'eid amru chacham kol hamayim elam liyisrael dayin she'eni hogun Kilu heikim matzeva, shnema v'sokim l'cha matzeva, shesoni Hashem l'kecha. There's different biyurim in the Mefarshim. What's the connection between a dayan, she'eni hagun, to a person that to be making a matzeva? In other words, he's doing it maybe l'shem shamayim, being making matzeva, but l'peil, there's an issur, that's something which the Eibusher doesn't want. U'b'mokim talmid chacham, when a person puts someone that's eini hagun, b'mokim talmid chacham, ki'ilu nota asherah, shnamar l'sita l'cha asherah, kol eitz eitzel mizbach Hashem l'kecha shetas l'cha. Now, the pasuk over there is that you're not allowed to be niteya and eitz next to the mizbeach. So Tesis brings Sanhedrin that since we're dealing b'makom talmid chacham, so they are mechaper, so they're like a mizbeach, and now you're putting someone that's a eini hagen next to these people that are talmid chacham. That's al derech l'sit l'cha asher kol eitz eitzel mizbach Hashem l'kecha. V'chein amar chacham l'sasu iti l'kei kesev l'kei zov. So we learn now that Alika, Bob, Bishvul Kesev V'Zov, Za'adayin Sheminu Mepnei Osher B'Vav. There's a dayin that they were manim because of his Oshrei, so that goes into the gather of L'kei Kesef V'L'kei Zov, that L'sasun Iti L'kei Kesef V'L'kei Zov. Halacha test, Kol dayin shnosen moment, Kedei She Yismana, is Osir Lamed Miponov, V'tziva Chachomim L'Hokal Eisei, U'L'Zalzel Beiv, Amru Chachomim Sha'atala Shemesatim Bo, so bepel mamish you're not allowed to give him covet, and fakert lezalzel you're not allowed to give him covet, and you have to be mezalzel bay, and also in your mind, in your heart, he has to be tihi beinecha k'mardash shel chamer. Kacho yederech hachomer rishenu, as opposed to this dying was nosen moment kadeshi yismana berchem mil yismanis v'dechin atzna harbe shel yeshu bedin at sheyedu she'en sham roi komesom. If they feel, if they realize that without them sitting down to a dintera, there'll be tiskalkal ashura, there's no one like them to be able to paskin, so then they go and paskin. Nafal became lehoyeshu ledin, ashemachbid malei ma'om vaskenim or peitzumam. So in other words, Bechlal, they didn't push themselves to do it. In Fakir, they stayed far away from it. But when they realize that there's no one else to do it, and if they're not going to do it, so there won't be a proper din, so then they'll do it, but also even then they don't do it like they do it reluctantly until that machbidin aleim askenu peitzim b'hem, and only then do they go ahead and sit down by the Torah.